Understand the external noise. It's loud, it's scattered, it's unconscious, and it can give us hallucinations. We can try our hardest to change the external, but will never be satisfied because something or the other will remain to be changed. Because unless the inner changes, the outer can never be perfect. We can keep on repeating positive affirmations or condition our mind, but will always be unsatisfied. The external noise makes us addicted to things. It could be food, sex, romance, material possessions, or it could be any external elements which keep you on the surface. Because when the energy stays on the surface, it will cultivate anxiety, confusion, and restlessness. Take a pause today to explore the inner, to explore your solitude. Don't wait for full moon. Don't wait for any perfect sign. The time to be in solitude is now. The time to be in union with your inner strength is now. I am Chandresh Bhardwaj, and this is Break the Norms. Namaste everyone, I hope you have been doing well. Before we get into the topic for today, a quick reminder and an invitation to explore the conscious meditation program in Leela Gurukul. I know many of you have been exploring and sending us questions and messages, but I just want to share one gratitude that the applicants have been absolutely beautiful. It's a dream come true to read these applications because I'm a big fan of choosing the right students because they shape you as a teacher. The right students change everything about you as a teacher, as a leader, and the kind of students who have been showing up are absolutely beautiful. But I also want to address this one element that do not take this as a pressure that you have to be some sort of perfect student to be part of Leela, because I think this was at least 70% question from many applicants that I'm not as experienced or I may not fit the perfect vibe of the Leela students, and I never ever want you to feel any pressure of being perfect or being experienced enough to be part of Leela. That's not at all what we want to put out there. Not today, not ever. The only qualification or the only request from me to you is be curious. Curiosity will help you expand the experience of Leela, and curiosity is the only thing that we are looking for. So when we ask you to apply for Leela, it's not to reject you, not to judge you based on what you have done, but it's truly to help you reflect on how curious you are and to help us understand your journey better, because I do want this program to be personalized in a certain way, and for that to happen it would be very helpful for me to have a quick glimpse into your story, and that's why the application and the video interviews have been very helpful. So don't feel this pressure that you need to fit into any perfect model, because we already have plenty of crazy stuff happening where some sort of perfect a model or version of you is needed. Leela will never be that place. You are welcome as you are. Your curiosity is welcome as it is. So please don't think that, and do apply if you have been overthinking. And one thing I do want to share with you in the Leela's vision is that we would never rebrand the spiritual wisdom, we would never rebrand tantra, because many of you have asked question about certain mantras or certain techniques of meditation out there, and you have been asking what is your technique, what is your method. So we are not inventing any new technique or any method. Nobody has done that except the teachers who existed hundreds and thousands of years ago. But what you really see in the modern spiritual market is the rebranding, rehash of the old wisdom. And again, we don't want to do that. So what you will receive in Leela is the direct wisdom, direct source, direct messages from the masters, from the teachers. And based on the popular demand, we have added some very powerful elements which are now shared publicly on the Leela newsletter. But two of my favorite new elements are a complete new talk on Goddess Kali and a new detailed talk on Vigyan Bhairav Tantra, the most powerful or one of the most powerful Tantra scripture from where all the meditations have been derived. So everything you see out there in meditation is derived from Vigyan Bhairav Tantra, which means the science of going beyond consciousness. And it's unfortunate all these teachers and schools, they keep rebranding these meditations and they never give credit to the source. But the least we can do in Leela or in our lives is to give credit, to honor these teachers and masters who have made available all these beautiful wisdom lessons for us. And I genuinely feel we are going through a golden transition where so much powerful stuff is happening. And I know many of you are going through this phase where you are questioning things, where you are reflecting on your actions and your creativity, and you are pausing to reflect on what shall I be doing now, what's the next step, how do I go deeper. And it's not an accident. Leela is taking birth in a time where many of you are going through this transitional phase. So do explore the Leela program. If it speaks to you, reach out to us. If for some reason you want to join but you cannot pay and your financial situation is not going well, do let us know. Do not hold back. I don't think in CB space we believe in holding back. We believe in expressing. So do not hold back. Do express. Do let me know your challenges. You have my text number in the show notes. You have the email askcb@Leela Gurukul. The only thing I've not given is my home address, and let's just keep it a private information for now. But you have many ways of reaching out. So do reach out. Let me know what are your challenges, what's stopping you to not just join Leela, but just to what's stopping you to expand your strength, what's stopping you to believe in your journey, because this is powerful time. There's a lot of alignments happening out there. So be unapologetic about your growth, because that's what needs to happen right now. And now we'll get into the topic for today. It's absolutely one of my most favorite subjects to talk, and I've been waiting to talk on this for so long. And this episode will require you to just relax, sit back, and if you can find a very peaceful, cozy space, do that, because I think the elements in this episode, they are just very soft, very beautiful, and I do want that all of us receive this information in the most receptive way. If it goes right, if this episode goes right, it might change your entire spiritual practice. So keep that in mind, and let's begin. So today's episode is about silence. And I know in the Western world we understand silence as almost a way of telling someone to shut up, right? Because whenever I have used the word silence, I have received many questions that we don't want to be silent. We have been silent for too long. Now we don't want to be silent anymore. And I get the struggle. This is struggle of language. And now I understand why in the Sanskrit language there are many words which convey a very deep meaning. For example, in the Eastern traditions, we use the word ananda for happiness, and ananda doesn't mean like the happiness the way we use in the English language. Ananda means eternal bliss, a bliss that comes from within. And I know people who speak Japanese, who know Sanskrit or Persian language. I mean, people who speak they come from certain cultures. There is a lot of depth in many languages. Unfortunately, we get restricted in the English language to use certain words, and they convey multiple meanings. And I was sharing with someone that I do feel uncomfortable sharing certain words in my poetry now. It could be muse, could be writing guru in my writings, because all these words have become so abused and misused. So I do feel that using words like divine feminine, muse, guru, divinity, godliness, awareness, they feel not right, because I can see these words have multiple interpretations, and they just don't feel good. And silence is another term with multiple interpretations. So to keep it clear, because we are going to be talking about silence for the next few minutes, to keep things clear, silence in this episode doesn't mean suppression. Silence in spirituality doesn't mean that you're blocking or suppressing something. It means going deeper into your solitude, and we have a word in tantra for that. The word is maun, spelled as M-A-U-N, maun. Maun would be defined as the eternal silence, the effortless solitude, where you start to receive the cosmic information. Maun does not mean that you're bypassing or suppressing or skipping any important feelings. Maun means to witness. Maun means to be in solitude. Maun means that you have gone beyond the mind, because mind means man in Hindi or Sanskrit. And if you see the word mantra, mantra is the instrument to manage the mind, the instrument that helps you to go beyond the mind. So mantra, man plus antra, right? Man comes there. And then maun means a practice, a technique that helps you to go beyond the mind. And there's another word in it called muni. Muni are the monks, and they are the monks who have mastered the art of being in silence. There are many monks out there who remain silent for their sadhana, for their meditation practice. And I've shared this before. In the Eastern traditions, there are many layers of the teachers and the monks and the spiritual experts, tantrics, agoris, sadhu, pandit, muni. I mean, I can keep going, but they are different levels, hierarchy levels as well. And muni would be someone who is mostly in silence. In fact, at one of the most powerful tantra temples in India of goddess Kamakhya in Assam, they have a festival once a year where the tantrics from all over the world shows up. And many tantrics there who show up, they don't speak, they are in complete silence. And also another festival that happens in India called Kumbh festival. If you follow my work, I was at a Kumbh festival. I was speaking there not last year, but the year before Corona, so 2019 January. I launched my podcast there, by the way. So in Kumbh, millions of people showed up to meditate every day for a couple of weeks. And that's where I met many monks who were just silent for years, not just 1, 2, or 3 years, but more than 5 years, more than 8 years. And this is the point I want to discuss. Why would someone go in complete silence and not use any words? What would that do? Two interesting stories about it that motivated me to record this podcast. And I can feel already this might be slightly longer than my favorite duration. I mean, it's already 15 minutes and I've been talking and I haven't even started sharing the main thing. So I usually don't like to keep it beyond 15 minutes, but I mean, certain topics need more time. And I realized I just added another 40 seconds explaining that. So, two interesting experiences. One of them is just very personal, and I don't know if I've shared this before. So, when I would say I was maybe a year or 2 year old, my father left the village we were in. There was political unrest, a lot of chaos happening in the state of Punjab in northern India. And because he was a very known religious leader, spiritual teacher there, so he was in trouble, with all the extremist groups, terrorist groups, so he had to leave. And that was also the time when he was at the peak of his work, and he suddenly had to leave the city, the state, and move far away where nobody knew him. And that was interesting time because there was no social media, not even mainstream media. I'm talking about 1987, 88. So there were very limited means of reaching out, and he could not reveal his location that publicly because there was just too much crazy trouble happening everywhere with many people in the northern India. So during that time, from the peak of his success, he had to sort of restart his journey completely. And he would send letters. He would call us once in a while, and my mother and I, my sister, we would go and speak to him. We didn't have the telephone in our house, so we would go somewhere where he would already call and tell them that I'll call again in 2 hours. And I was probably 3 or 4 year old by that time, very young. I have a lot of memories though. I remember more stuff about my childhood than I remember what I did last week. So I remember that time, and I would ask my mother, or even the people around, or even my father, whenever I would see him, that what have you been doing, where were you? And one of the answers I got was that he is practicing silence because he is sort of restarting a lot in his journey. And it didn't make sense to me. Why would you be silent, and where would you do that? Why would you do it? Where would you do it? What are the benefits of it, if there are any? I did not get my answer for many years, because you need to be, of course, in a certain age, in a certain receptivity, I believe, to understand it. And my spiritual journey kept on happening on and off. And long story short, few years later, when I got deeper into my meditation, I started learning a lot about his journey. He took me under his wings. I would visit tantra temples, but we never spoke about that few years of his life when he was in complete silence. And then I remember I took a solo trip with him, just him and me. That was our first trip together. And it was in that trip he started sharing the struggles that he faced, and that happened within 1 year of I was born. And in that time he shared something very important. He said, everything that I had built was suddenly gone, due to political unrest, and I had to find the meaning of my life again. And I couldn't afford to show up with the same strength. My strength had to be multiplied because I need to show up in a much stronger energy, because now it was 4 of us, you, your sister, your mother, so 4 of us, and I needed to be strong for all of you. And my father's guru, my grandpa, was alive as well at that time, so he knew that he needs to multiply his strength. And I said, what did you do to just find that strength? And he said, I knew my spiritual strength has to be multiplied because there's nothing else I knew, and that was the only thing I could depend on. If you remember the mantra that I've shared with you, Apo Deepa Bhava, be your own light. So that was his Apo Deepa Bhava moment, to remind himself to be his own light. And he said, under the guidance of his guru and other senior gurus that he came across, he decided to be in silence. And he chose this cave in a city called Mount Abu. There's a mountain there, Abu. So it's based, the name is from that mountain, Mount Abu. And he said, I spent months and years there. And it was after that my entire identity, changed. It was like something had died and many new energies have reborn in me, and this would show up again in this episode, and you'll be fascinated to hear that, because the words he used was that something died and something was born, and I am everything that I am today is because of that time in silence. I said, okay, that's interesting. And I was in 8th grade when he told me this. Time passed by and I left India after high school, and I was in college, and I decided to go to India for 1 month to just meditate, to just explore the spirituality, because by that time my meditation, my training had gone very deep, and it was the freshman year of college. I had 1 month off in the winters. So I called my school friend, and he lived near Mount Abu. Sahil, that's his name. So I called Sahil. I said, I'm coming to India, let's meet and let's go to Mount Abu. And he said, what's in Mount Abu? I said, that's the cave where Dad spent his time in silence. And he heard about it and he was like, let's go there. So both of us went there, and I have deactivated my Facebook, my personal Facebook, but I have a picture of my freshman year, and multiple times I go in silence, and I've never shared about it on social media, and I'll always keep it that way, until I live. And there's a reason to it, which I'll also share in the episode today. But this was, I think, my major introduction to the power of silence. Not suppression, not escaping anything, but inviting that deep solitude and then going unapologetically deep into it. After I moved to US, I started seeing that there are silent retreats, happening here. And for some reason, after I would read the description, they didn't make much sense to me, or they didn't appeal to me, so I never signed up for any. But I did go to this place in New York, upstate New York, to be in silence for 10 days, and that was again the first year of my college, and it felt very powerful. A lot of clarity, a lot of sense of courage, meaning, and I knew that if I could do one thing every year, that has to be my time in silence. But something started showing up in a very consistent way after I left Wall Street and started doing the work I do now. Many people would reach out and they would talk about their time in a silent retreat. They would tell me that they have been in a silent retreat and it didn't end well because they felt angry. They were, they felt everything was controlled, suppressed, and now they are, even more angry, and they don't want to go for any retreat, any spiritual experience before. So I was observing that a lot. So that kind of, invoked me to investigate deeper in what's happening in the silent retreats in America. Maybe something is not right there. And the reason I'm sharing this episode with you today, because during the COVID-19, the need to take care of your mental health, the need to go deeper into your spirituality has multiplied. And I hope you always maintain this, strength of the spirituality that you have been cultivating during the COVID. And I also know the moment everything opens up, the silent retreats will again come in, back into business, and you would want to take part into those. So you need to know a couple of things before you sign up for a silent retreat, and you need to know a bunch of things before you go into practicing silence. And number one thing I do want to share is what we call Mon, and I'm going to use the word Mon instead of silence from this point onward. What we call Mon is basically something that starts from being a witness and it concludes at being a receptive force. being receptive to the higher downloads, being receptive to your intuition, your awareness, and all the powerful stuff that shows up with receptivity. Because the problem we are dealing with is the external noise. Before social media, the external noise was limited to newspapers, TV channels, radio, and that was pretty much all about it. Or maybe your, gossip neighborhood, community. That might be the only, extended branch to the external noise. But now it's everywhere. As I'm speaking to you right now, I have 3 devices in front of me, and the moment I'll open any device, there is global gossip happening there, right? Spiritual gossip, emotional gossip, mindless gossip. Every gossip is mindless, but the external noise is so much that if you don't take control of it, it will affect your mental health. And it's wiring our brain in a very dangerous way. We are depending on this external noise to escape from our reality, to escape from our truth. I lived in Hollywood for 8 years, and I was in the heart of Hollywood, surrounded by nightclubs, restaurants, the perfect social, space there. And I don't even know why I lived there for 8 years. I mean, I'm sure there was, reason to be there. But one thing I used to observe every weekend, or let's say Thursday till Sunday, that everyone wants to lose their reality, their problems in that noise. They want to numb down every emotion they have. It was visible in their energies. And for me, it was a lesson for 8 years to observe human behavior and just witness that how the human mind is being wired and systematically conditioned to not address the problems but escape them. And this is an important point to understand, that are you depending on external noise? Are you using the external noise to escape your present moment? It could be as unconscious as spending random number of minutes on Instagram. It could be even listening to podcast just to escape a problem. It could be joining a spiritual gathering, a spiritual community, a yoga studio to escape the problem. Because if you keep on calculating, if you keep on analyzing things, your mind stays busy. The moment you witness, who am I? The moment you witness your existence, the trouble starts, because that's where a lot of suppression, a lot of craziness lives. And I feel many of us unconsciously keep escaping the reality. And this is why the brands of spirituality, where they sort of give you imaginary hallucinations and they, create imaginary figures for you to cling on, they become very popular brands because they're giving what you're already looking for, but just in a spiritual packaging. You got to be very aware of these brands, these teachers, these schools, these organizations, where you are not encouraged to question, you are not encouraged to expand your courage, but you are encouraged to imagine, play with your illusions, and keep building them. That's dangerous. That will stop your spiritual growth and your creativity. The important thing to understand here is, in the Eastern traditions, we define Maun as the complete sadhana. We look at the practice of silence as the complete spiritual practice, because the practice of Maun is something that affects each and every aspect of your consciousness. And this is why it's recommended that no matter what you do, you got to start from Maun. It doesn't matter if you do a powerful mantra, if you have the most powerful guru, if you have access to the most powerful teachings. It's all incomplete and irrelevant if you are not practicing silence. The internal Maun is very powerful because without it, everything will be half-baked. Everything will be limited in its expression. And it's for this reason that the status of maun, the status of silence, is very, very high. It wouldn't be wrong thing to say that it's the prerequisite, but also the peak of your spiritual growth, to be in this silence, to be in the maun. The way we understand silence today, or the way it's taught in the modern spiritual, groups, is that you simply stop speaking, and that's considered maun or silence. But that's not at all, not even closer to the real maun. Because if I'm not speaking, that doesn't mean much, because I have only stopped speaking. But what about my inner conversation? What about my inner hustle with all the thoughts? Because what we speak is anyway a very limited expression of what's happening within. There is much more chaos that happens within. There is much more drama that happens within. So if you stop speaking, that does not count as maun, because this is something I come across everywhere. In silent retreats and meditation groups, they are doing the so-called silent meditations, and they end up being very angry, or when they have the little talking break, they talk more than anyone in the group. And also when the retreat ends, it's a boost of ego, and a lot of new drama that starts to show up. I taught this retreat in Italy, and we had a group there already who was in silence. They were doing the silent retreat, and my group was doing my kind of retreat, just regular tantra, good stuff. So my group was asking me, why are these students silent? And I explained them there is something called maun, the silent retreat. And all of the students from Break the Norms retreat were like, why can't we do it? I said, if you do all well, by the completion of this retreat, you'll be effortlessly silent. I assure you that. But now that you have mentioned the silent, that you want to be in silence, I want you to observe this group, the one who's in silent already, and I promise you, this group will be the most talkative group the moment their break is over, because I can already see they are just not speaking, but they are talking a lot in their head. And that's exactly what happened. The moment their silent time was over, they were the most loud, noisy group in the entire retreat center, and they were given multiple warnings to keep the volume low, because it was disturbing other groups in the retreat center. Now, why would this happen? A group who was practicing silence for many days, they suddenly bursted with so much sound, so much noise. The reason is that silence is forced silence. That silence happens because some spiritual teacher has told you to be in silence. That happens because you have spent money to be in a retreat center in the fancy mountains of Italy, and you just go with the vibe. And we are very quick to follow the crowd, the herd mentality, and when everyone else is doing it, you also start to do it. And we don't question things, we don't reflect on things in a deeper way. And I've always shared that before you show up in a silent retreat, first start practicing silence on a daily basis or a weekly basis. The beauty with silence is it doesn't cost anything, and you can practice it anywhere. Not speaking is not silence, so that's one major point that you have to understand. The Rig Veda, which is one of the oldest wisdom scripture, wisdom text in Sanskrit, they have a lot to say about the silence, and they even say that when you touch a certain peak of consciousness through meditation, there is a certain layer of consciousness that shows up, and that layer was always called Mon or Montav, which means the experience of that deep solitude. And you don't right away jump on it. There are obviously, states and layers, reflections that you have to go through. But once you do that, once you do it the right way, the silence shows up. And as I said, if you understand this well, it will completely change your spiritual practice, completely change your healing process. Now, as you're listening to me, if you pay attention, you'll notice that we keep on talking unnecessarily, unconsciously. And social media has given us a lot of pressure to keep talking. The apps like, it could be podcast, could be apps like Clubhouse, Instagram stories, the live videos, they put us in this pressure that you have to talk, and you have to talk as if your life depends on it. And I was actually sharing it with a student yesterday that I have been avoiding going to Clubhouse because it feels like everyone is trying to sound smarter than the other person. Everyone is making very sure and trying too hard to sound like the next enlightened person, in the app. But that's what happens, right? We could ruin everything with the way we handle our words. We keep on talking, and then there is no distance between our mind and our stories. And we start to believe our lies. We become our stories. We become the roles we play because we never pause. There's no distance between the roles that I'm playing and between my actual reality. And the last few episodes were focused on really understanding your roles and playing them from a distance, playing them with detachment, really. Because all the noise is in mind, but all the silence, all the bliss is in awareness. And whenever there is too much noise, it will dictate your feelings. It will dictate all the data that's stored up in your mind. And keep in mind one thing, that everything you speak and think, every impression, action, intention, thought, it's adding karmic layer, it's adding karmic footprint, it's adding to the karmic contract. Right now, as I'm talking and you are listening, this is adding in the karmic contract between you and me. I mean, imagine, this is so powerful. You don't know me, I don't know you. We only know each other through this energy. You know a little bit about me because I, have been speaking on the podcast. But I don't know how many people are listening until, you reach out and you tell me, I listened and this is how it affected me. But there is so much karmic impression, happening with each wrong dating partner, each wrong business decision, each wrong, text message exchange. It's cultivating the karmic impression, and then it's cultivating more noise, more confusion, more attachment, and this data keeps on repeating every single day. And also, we are in an age where we feel that we need to share our opinion on every single thing, from COVID vaccine to the next movie to the Netflix series. We feel that we need to be an expert in everything, and we don't want the experts to talk on it because we want to sound intelligent. We want to get some attention. And human being has always loved attention, and now that there are many outlets to get attention, and these outlets are making sure that you get stuck in that attention hungry cycle. So they keep feeding your attention, they keep feeding it. It's like, whenever you open your app, it gives you something yummy to taste, some dose of attention, some dose of validation, and it wires your brain to keep talking, to keep putting stuff out there without really reflecting on it. And this is why you need to understand that there is another way of living, which is the Mon, the silence. Because that silence is not suppression, it's not empty, it's filled with infinite clarity. It's filled with courage and direction. Because when you learn to be in silence, you will be at home wherever you are. Okay, I repeat, When you learn to cultivate the silence within, you will be at home wherever you are. In the next few minutes, I'm going to share the various ways of understanding this silence and cultivating it. And there's going to be tantra and some other Eastern wisdom, mentions in this one. And I want to start with the one of the most beautiful mantras in the Rig Veda. It says, Yasya yacha ya mritam yasya mrityu. It means that when you are in that deeper state of solitude, there is a death happening there in you. There is an experience of death that happens. Now, I have talked about death happening in two different, contexts. One was meditation and one was love. If you go deeper in meditation, it will create the death of mind. It will lead to the death of your mind, which means all the old stories, all the old, suppression, control, anger, all of that will melt away. And if you repeat the same thing in love, if you can truly experience love, if you can give love with that, openness, again you'll experience that death-like feeling, which means there is release, there is liberation, and a new you is born. Mon is the same way. If you play your cards right, a lot of the old in you will die, and a lot of a new in you will start to born. In the traditional wisdom scriptures, we define Mon, we explain Mon through 12 different forms, and I'm going to take you briefly through each form. And keep in mind, in all these forms, the alertness and the awareness is very important, which means Mon should not be unconscious. Mon should not be silent, random. It has to be filled with awareness. So when I'm not talking, that's not Mon. But when I'm not talking and there's absolute awareness of me not uttering unconscious words, that's Mon. The first form of Mon, the first stage of Mon is the Shabdik Mon, which means you start to understand how unconsciously you have been, using your words. So which means whenever you talk with awareness, talk with love, compassion, understanding, clarity. And if these are missing, keep quiet. Because when you get into this reaction chain of simply saying what's coming into your mind, you are putting your brain, mind, body into this reactive chain, which means you will always react. You will never express with awareness. And as you start to practice the Shabdik Mon, you'll realize not speaking all the time has a lot of power. It brings new energy, new confidence. It gives you the ability to build your muscles of awareness. That starts to happen. Second stage of the Mon is Pano Mon, which means not only you have a lot stronger management over your words, but your arms, your hands, they are also in deep awareness. They're also experiencing a deep solitude. Buddha used to practice this a lot. Whenever he would sit, his entire body was in the Mon. And there's a story when, he was meditating and there's a mosquito who sat on his arm and he just reacted to it, and he felt bad about it because he said, this is how reactive I am. Like a mosquito sat on my hand and I could not control it. So many advanced yogis and seekers have, been very careful about the Pano Mon, which is witnessing your arms and your hands. So I'm taking you through a meditative experience right now that whenever you can, daily, once a week or once a month, this is how the stages of Mon can cultivate. And you should repeat this podcast, I think, a few times to understand it deeply. So first, the control on the words. Second, the control, the understanding of your arms and hands. Then the third one is Pado Mon, which means in this stage of Mon, you are, your feet, your legs, your nails, they are not moving unconsciously. They are not randomly reacting to things. And then comes the fourth stage, Angik Mon. And Angik Mon means, besides all the body parts I mentioned, every other part of your physical body is at complete state of rest. They are not reacting, not moving unconsciously. And this is where that mantra of Rig Veda about experiencing a death kind of energy, that starts to happen in this fourth stage. This is very powerful because this is where you might start to feel sleepy. You might start to feel distracted maybe. But if you do it right way, you will start to experience the rising of consciousness within, the rising of energy, especially around the lower spine, or maybe around the neck, or maybe around the navel center. But in my experience, the lower spine starts to cultivate a very powerful energy. So this is where you must cultivate a lot of the awareness, attention to not moving, not reacting to anything. And keep in mind, you don't have to escape into a super quiet space to practice this. You could do it anywhere, at home, surrounded by family, in a park, anywhere. Because if you chase that perfect quiet experience, you may not be able to manifest it. So don't worry about it. Practice Mon wherever you can, because then you can do it anywhere. The fifth stage of Mon is Pratyangik Mon, which means the inner silence. Because when the physical body is at complete state of solitude, the inner silence starts to happen. And it's the inner silence where you experience the solitude, the internal energy. You start to experience that there are some powerful things happening within you. And in this experience, you start to see there are energy movements happening in your breathing, in your heart, in your eyes. Many people even start to see what's within the body in this stage. And if you move through this in a mindful way, you experience the sixth stage, which is Twitch Mon. Twitch means twacha, like skin, which is basically the ordering or suggesting your skin to be in solitude. So it's not moving, it's not doing anything. And they are very subtle, gentle states of Mon. This is how the scriptures are written. They go through such deeper, subtle layers that ultimately either you are completely in it or you are not at all in it, because they take you into a space where your entire being is inspired to taste what could happen if my skin, my eyes, my entire body is in that complete state of silence. Now the seventh stage of Mon. This is interesting. It's the Rasik Mon. Rasik is your taste. Okay, this is what the monks practice a lot. And I know in lately I'm coming across people, especially in LA, who are trying to manage their food in a very mindful way, which means anything you eat, it has to be eaten with awareness. So it means you should not be eating or chasing the food that's super delicious, because it will create certain experiences, right? It will create certain temptations, pleasure. So the practice of Mon is basically not to get into the physical pleasure, but to go beyond it. And the tantra would say, whatever you eat with awareness. But I do recommend whatever you eat lighter during the Mon. If you're practicing mon for an hour or two, then it's fine. But on that particular day you could eat lighter. And if you're practicing mon for more than one day, then eat the food that's low on salt, low on sugar, low on the oil, like basically very sattvic food, which means like sattvic, I don't know how to explain it in English, but sattvic would be a gentle food like salad, saute vegetables, fruit, nothing too heavy, nothing too spicy, nothing too crazy for the body, keeping it very light, very subtle, nothing that makes you like eat more. So Rasik Mon is that. And then the eighth stage is Hashe Mon. Hashe Mon is basically the kind of mon where you are seeing things but not judging them. So you could be looking at a mountain, or you could be looking at a beautiful woman or a man, but it's not doing anything in your body, which means you are gaining control over your senses. You're gaining control over how you react to a man, woman, or any person who might be very attractive to you at that point. When this kind of mon, when this kind of silence starts to happen, I mean, you're basically start to tapping into your intuition, your consciousness in a very, very powerful way. So do not take it lightly. Whenever you can, do it. I recommend many students that if it's a certain kind of image about a man, woman, or anyone that makes you arouse sexually, you look at them, you imagine them, you look at them, and look at them with a meditative awareness, and you'll see that the temptation, the sexual urge will start to fade away. In fact, many tantra teachers used to do that before. They would send their students to the erotic temples or make them meditate on the erotic images, because when you keep witnessing, the infatuation starts to fade away. And I'm not the kind of teacher who would say, suppress your desires, suppress your temptations, but I'm someone who would say, witness those temptations. And it's my advice to myself and to everyone. If you feel attracted to anyone, instead of giving yourself a moral lesson in desires, encourage yourself to witness that energy, that person, and you'll realize that these, people are still beautiful to you, but you're not seeing them through lust. So the Hashe Mon or the Drishya Mon, you are able to really witness things, humans, experiences, but not be dominated by them. Now the ninth stage of Mon, that would be Shrut Mon, which means you are able to witness the sounds as they're coming and going. This means that any sound that's happening, you are witnessing them as just a sound. They are not good sound, bad sound, spiritual sound, distracting sound. They are simply the sounds. This will open very powerful channels in your ears. I don't know how many of you already experience a certain sound in your ear when you meditate. But that's how this happens. There comes a point that you start to hear the mantras. You start to hear very interesting sounds, which could be defined as the sounds coming from some other dimension, but they are very much the sounds around you, but because you are so deeply distracted by the noise that you don't understand the silence. And the 10th stage is the Gandhik Mon, which means any smell, any fragrance that you witness, they're not influencing you. These fragrances, these smells are not creating any feeling, creating any energy on you. Many tantric gurus practice this. They would meditate at random places where there could be terrible smell or there could be the most beautiful smell, but they would simply witness it. They will simply watch as it's coming and going. And then the 11th stage of Mon is the Chit Vritti Mon. Chit means consciousness, and this is the stage of Mon where, a lot of teachers would say this is where the real Mon starts, because this is the mon where you are co-creating with your consciousness. You are absolutely in union with your higher consciousness. In this stage, there is no control, there is no tension, no stress, no stiffness. You are simply diving into the solitude. There are, thoughts coming and going, drama is happening, but you are beyond the mind. This is where you really start to experience that there is a lot of stuff happening beyond my mind, a lot of stuff happening beyond my thoughts. I am more than my thoughts. And finally, the Chitvritti Mon, this conscious silence, leads to the Asat Mon, which is not so different from the 11th stage, but what happens in this one is the divinity, the intuition, the healing. It's not impossible to find, not difficult to find at all, but maybe difficult to avoid, because you have become such a powerful vessel of this light, this higher energy, that everything you experience is loaded with higher energy. You become very, very powerful, energetic being. Keep in mind, all these stages of silence were shared with you to learn them slowly, to practice them whenever you can. And do not jump into them right away, because then you might jump out of them right away as well. Learn them, grow with them. Even if you master, like 10% of it in next 5 years, that's great. I'm still trying to learn. So there's no race, there's no stress of making it happen overnight. But learn it, understand it, maybe write down these 12 stages of silence in your own words, and then whenever you can, start practicing it. In all the tantric teachers, all the senior teachers in the Eastern spirituality, they recommend Maun as the first stage of all the higher sadhanas. And those who are joining Leela, and if you're listening to this, I think you should start to do it as soon as possible. But those who are not joining Leela, I would recommend find 5 minutes, 10 minutes, little time on a daily basis to create practical applications of all the stages of Maun that I've shared with you. And if you keep practicing 5 minutes, 10 minutes, then you expand on it slowly. Soon you'll start to know that all of these 12 stages are so interestingly connected. And within a year or so, or even within few months, you'll be able to practice the silence for, 1 hour, 2 hours, an entire day. And once you feel fully comfortable with your expression, take at least 1 day, 3-day trip solo, or maybe with your friend, and practice complete silence, which means you're not going to talk with your friend through texting or through anything. That's not Maun. I hope that's clear by now. But this is very interesting, an advanced topic for the sadhakas, for the meditators and seekers. And I truly hope this was helpful. And I mean, the funny thing is, it's a episode on silence and we have spoken for 58 minutes already. But that's where we are. To explain silence, we need to talk about 1 hour. But I hope that 1 hour will be helpful to all of you. That's all for today. I'll be very curious to know how this episode turned out for you. Do text me or share on Instagram or email us at askcb@leelagurukul.com, and I'll wait to hear from you. Be safe, be well. I hope this podcast may travel through the untapped universe of your darkness, light, courage, passion, and so much more. Please do subscribe and be ready to break your norms. I am so excited and very honored to be part of your sacred journey through this podcast.